You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
Hey folks, today not so much of a rant as a discussion on the subject of cannabis and creativity. It's something we've brought up before in our discussions with Dr. Mitch Earlywine, and it's something I've had some experience with both as a writer and as a musician. So I'm going to play a video. This comes from the Huffington Post, and there's a great long article on there. I'm not going to go through the whole article, but it's about cannabis and creativity, and I thought it would be something interesting for us to talk about here in the Radical Rant as well as in Hour 2. So let's listen to that, and then we'll come back and discuss further.
All right, so I've recently written this article about the relationship between marijuana and creativity. Now, I think this really needs to be part of the national dialogue at this point as we move towards complete decriminalization of this plant, which is something that needs to happen ASAP, as it's the most therapeutically active substance known to man, in my opinion. But anyway, we all know all these luminous, brilliant artists throughout history have talked about how marijuana has expanded their sense of wonder and their intellectual curiosity. Carl Sagan spoke about how wonderful his experiences with marijuana were. Richard Feynman has talked about his use of marijuana. Walter Benjamin wrote the book on hashish with these philosophical protocols about the subjective effects of marijuana on his consciousness. You know, there have been many others. Charles Baudelaire used to have his hashish house where members of the intelligentsia used to come together to expand their sense of individuality and whatnot. But recently I read this article called Marijuana and Divergent Thinking, written by Jonah Lair, where he cites this recent study from a psychiatry journal that was looking at marijuana's ability to expand our free associative capacities. Some users of marijuana report having a heightened creativity and a sort of enhanced ability to make novel connections among seemingly disparate ideas. And so they looked at this notion of semantic priming, which is the way that we activate one word and then we create immediate associations related to that word. So if I say bird, you might think of aviation, you might think of flight, you might think of a jet. Now, apparently, marijuana induces a state of hyperpriming when you're likely to make wider and more far-reaching associations between words, which in a way is the essence of creativity, the ability to draw novel connections among seemingly disparate ideas. So if somebody in a hyperprimed state might be thinking about aviation, then they might be thinking about mankind soaring above our limitations. Aviation is a symbol of transformation, is a symbol of transcending our limitations. I mean, it expands the breadth and depth of the associations that one makes, and the fact that these guys showed that marijuana users indeed that marijuana induces a state of hyperpriming in them, I think seals the deal in terms of its relationship to creativity, and should be really part of the conversation, because I think it does in fact prove that marijuana enters the cognitive toolkit as a creative catalyst that expands our ability to see patterns. You can stop.
So there, and I have to agree with him in a lot of ways here, and I discussed my own creativity, and I kind of subtitled this rant, you try doing 739 daily talk shows, but there's a truth to that, this ability to be able to expand your consciousness, to be able to reach out and make connections that you have never made before. And I thought this tailored really well with what Paul Armentano was mentioning in his presentation previous here about being pro-pot, about us needing to not apologize for marijuana or say that it's our right to do harm to ourselves, but to actually point out to the people out there how we are bettering our lives through the use of cannabis. And Bill Hicks, the great comedian, said it best, take your album collection and separate all the people who did drugs out of it, and what are you left with? Not a very good album collection. I mean, Jimi Hendrix and all the great artists of their time were well known to have used cannabis and other psychotropic substances, a lot of LSD use, a lot of magic mushroom use. And this is a matter of getting beyond the box that your mind is always trapped in your own, personal realities, and being able to expand to a greater sense. I had an experience like this this last vacation, this July 4th weekend, and got this ability to feel an empathy that I had not felt before, and being able to feel like you're in touch and connected with not just other people, but also with nature. And I know that when people hear this kind of talk and they see that video or they hear what I'm saying and they haven't used cannabis, they kind of laugh it off, haha, yeah, sure, right, you know. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that most people's drug experience out there is either nicotine or alcohol or some combination thereof. And nicotine does get you kind of jittery and you can get that severe physical dependence from it, but it doesn't really, I think, alter your mental state. Maybe some smokers will disagree with me on this. Alcohol tends to make us bring out the worst in us. The worst that we know the crying drunk, we know the blabbery drunk, the I love you drunk, the hateful drunk. We know them all, but we can't really see that as being enhancing the mind or creativity. When we're talking about cannabis and some of these other natural substances, though, we are talking about something here that has been used by human beings for thousands and thousands of years to enhance their creativity. It's even said by people like Terence McKenna that it may have been the evolutionary step between our primate ancestors to our human consciousness now may have involved the use of some of these psychotropic substances. I can agree with that too. So when we look at cannabis and creativity, we have to ask ourselves, why would our system, why would our society not want us to experience this? And, you know, we can take, you know, what they say on face value, you know, that there's the gateway theory and it's going to lead to heroin and the kids and there'll be loss of productivity and danger and blood in the streets, etc. I don't even know if they really believe that. I wonder how much of this really has to do with the stifling of creativity and the stifling of nature necessary to exist in the corporate society that we have built today. You know, if you've got a job working, you know, in the cubicle and your job is to run boring TPS reports all day, we don't need you expanding your mind and seeing that your job is bullshit and all you're doing it for is a paycheck and that you're ticking away the moments that make up the dull day, just frittering and wasting, you know, as Pink Floyd said. This is what they are trying to stifle, and this is why cannabis is so dangerous to them in so many ways. This expansion of the mind, the feeling of connectedness to other people, to nature itself, this is what they are trying to shut down, and that's another reason why it is so important for us to continue to show the positive aspects of cannabis, the positive aspects of cannabis use, and the positive nature of cannabis consumers. Right now in the studio, we have a good friend sitting in here watching the show who we've met through the cannabis community. I can't tell you how many people I've met from so many different backgrounds, Vietnam veterans to young students, grandmothers to cancer sufferers, people from all walks of life that have come together in this cannabis community, and I know that the cannabis is a large part of it. I remember being a barroom musician for years and years and years, and I would see the same barflies night after night drinking. But did they ever really hang out outside of the bar? Did they ever have anything in common outside of the bar? Not so much. But with the cannabis community, I find us to be people that build strong and lasting friendships, that help each other through tough times. You know, a friend with weed is a friend indeed is not just a cute little saying, it's the way we treat each other. So don't be ashamed of cannabis and learn how it can enhance your creativity and take advantage of that. Show people that being a cannabis consumer is a positive thing, that using cannabis can be an enhancement in one's life, and maybe we can start tipping those scales a little bit, giving people something to vote for the liberalization of cannabis instead of voting against the prohibition of cannabis. Let's give them something to vote for. Let's show them what they're missing. Let's show them how much better the world would be without marijuana prohibition. All right, folks, we got to call it a day. For those of you joining us live, stick around for hour 2.
Normal Show live, the voice of the marijuana nation.
And we'll be right back after this. For those of you on the podcast, we'll talk to you tomorrow. For Cannabis Carrie, Ganja John, Wiz Kaliko, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
If you try it,